Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel, and welcome to 5 things you should never do to your car, the Mechanics Edition. These are things that I see people do all the time that you should actually not be doing, or at least try to avoid as much as possible. Let us start with number 1 right after this. The first one is, and this is something I see people do a lot, don't drive your car on a low tank of fuel all the time. Look, folks, I understand that some are on a budget. You don't really have the money to fill up that tank all the time, and you're always putting 20 bucks, 10 bucks as the finances allow. But here's what you're actually doing, and you're going to end up having issues. See, gasoline cars have a fuel pump that sits in the fuel tank. That fuel pump is actually cooled by the fuel. So the more you have it submerged, the better for that fuel pump. It's going to run cooler, it's going to last a lot longer. In the case of Toyota and Lexus, this is what our channel kind of focuses on. We rarely have fuel pump problems, and the ones that we do have fuel pump problems, they're usually recalled or something taken care of. But usually what kills fuel pumps in Toyotas is continuously running it on low. You put $10, you run it down almost to empty, then you put $10 again. Don't do that. Here's a suggestion though. If you are that person that is on a budget, you can't really afford to fill up the tank right away. You have to put little amount at a time. Save up, fill up your tank. Then every time it gets to half tank, put that $10. That way, we always have half a tank. Should there be ever an emergency and you need to go somewhere, you don't have to fill up the car. It's not always on empty. And then you're also preserving your fuel pump. Trust me, fuel pumps are very expensive in modern cars. I'm glad that they are very reliable, but when they do go, because you're always running it on low, they can be very expensive. And as an additional tip, since we are speaking of fuel, don't overfill your gas tank. We've talked about this in details in a video, which I'll leave right here, but you could cause significant damage if you continuously and kind of intentionally overfill the tank just to get a few extra miles. That's kind of the opposite of running it low all the time. So basically, the medium ground is best. And another additional tip, use the gasoline that is intended for your car. If your car wants regular gas, use regular gas. If it needs premium, use premium. But don't use regular gas on your premium car. That's kind of obvious. But equally, don't use premium in your regular car because you're just wasting money. Scientifically, on everything around it, there's absolutely no benefit in that. It's just a waste of money. What engine does your car have? Not how do you rebuild that engine, but basic question. Do you know what engine your car has? Do you know what basic technology it have? Because that really impacts how you're going to operate it and how you're going to take care of it. For example, I ask people all the time, hey, what engine does your car have? It has a 4-cylinder, I think, that ends up being a V6. They don't know. And that's okay. We're not anticipating everybody to know everything about cars. But these basic things that you know about your car can actually impact the way you're going to take care of it. I'll give you a few examples. If your car has direct injection, you might want to know about that. Does it have just direct injection, or does it have direct and port? You might want to know about this because direct injected cars only, unfortunately, the byproduct of that is carbon buildup. You can never prevent it, but you can actually change your driving habits and kind of maintenance habits to prevent it from being an issue from the carbon buildup. For example, don't drive all city on a direct injected engine, even with any engine, but with direct injected engines. Seriously, don't do all city driving because that is your highway to carbon buildup that is harmful. They all build carbon, but if we don't have issues, we're not worried about it. And then the other thing is, do you ever take your car on the highway and do you drive it very conservatively on the highway? Did you know that this is a term that mechanics use, Italian tune-up. Do that every single day. Potentially you'll wear things down and we have issues. But once a week, once every 2 weeks, you push your car to the red line and kind of let it breathe. That's what we call it, Italian tune-up. It's actually helpful to your car because you're driving at short distances, and that's another one you should avoid. You're driving at short distances, you're only driving in the city, you never really get it past 2,000 RPM, and then that's the life of the car. It never really builds up enough pressure to push everything out. And now we have issues because you're driving it too conservative. I have built a lot of engines in my life as a technician. I see the ones that are driven hard and the ones that are driven very conservatively, babied. Usually the ones that are babied, they're full of carbon, even non-direct injected ones. And the ones that are driven hard, they have other wear because of that always revving high and all that, but they're usually very clean and carbon free. So don't be too conservative with your car, folks. Engines are meant to be driven. That's the other thing. You want to drive them though. Take an intentional long trip every once in a while. Get it up, push on it. Do it safely within the speed limit and everything. But once a week, once every 2 weeks, give her that good Italian tune-up. Your car will thank you for it, and you will get the benefit of that long term. And just to clarify one thing that I get asked a lot, doing an Italian tune-up or really pushing your car to red line and kind of going all out and letting the engine breathe once every week, once every 2 weeks is not going to harm your engine, folks. Do that every single day and every single drive, yes, over time, but not immediately, over time. But doing it once a week, every 2 weeks, wouldn't harm anything. If anything, it's actually going to benefit things. And most importantly, avoid short trips at all costs. And if you only live a mile away from work, warm up that car longer. Maybe on the way back, you don't want to be late to work, but on the way back, as you wind down to end the day, take a longer road. Instead of 1 mile, let's go 3-4 miles. It helps, every bit helps. Let these cars warm up, folks, especially in cold weather. It really helps them. The last two things on Know Your Engine. Do you have a turbocharged engine? Turbocharged engines, they require a lot more maintenance to keep them reliable for long term. And we did a specific video on that. I will leave that right here for full details on that. But you gotta know this stuff. And the most important thing, these long oil change intervals, folks, I cannot emphasize how disastrous that is for the longevity of your engine. If you know nothing about your engine, I don't know if it's a 4-cylinder, I don't know if it's direct injection, you know nothing about cars. You should know this. Whatever the manufacturer interval, these long 10, 15, 20,000 miles now, always cut it in half, if not 1/3. If you have a 10,000 mile interval, go 5. If you have to replace the oil every 1 year, go 6 months. People will write essays about this. I have been drying my voice since the channel started, telling you don't do this, because I see the effects of this. Everybody will write essays about this and how their car lasted, but not everybody drives in kind of the ideal driving conditions. If you do, it's fine, but 99% of people actually don't. And you don't want to fall for this one. The earlier you change your oil, the better. Don't go with these long intervals, please. This one is a good one for you. Don't hang things in places that are not meant to be hung from. I hope that makes sense. Let's get into it and you'll see. I see this all the time. This is one of the most common ones, and I admire folks for it. Don't hang a garbage bag from your shifter. I see this all the time. Folks are trying to keep their garbage away from the car and put it in a bag nice and neat. Don't hang it from the shifter, folks. Shifters slowly are disappearing, but the old school shifters, you really don't want to be doing that. The number one thing I see is park neutral safety switch issues, because you have something heavy hanging on the shifter, and it's actually pushing it. And eventually you get it just enough out of position where it just throws the computer off. And now we have premature wear unnecessarily. There is no need to do that. Leave that bag on the floor. It's perfectly safe and we're good. Don't hang it from the shifter. And another one that I see that could get very expensive and actually very quickly. Don't hang things around the steering column, or worse, the stalks. See, here's where I see happening from that. You hang a necklace, and I understand folks want to accessorize their cars and make it personal, and that's perfectly fine. But around the steering column area, that's a moving area, and behind the steering column on modern cars, there's something called a spiral cable in Toyota language, or a clock spring in kind of universal car language. That is what connects your airbag, all the steering wheel controls, your horn. That clock spring or spiral cable is actually a very big wound wire. And as you turn the wheel, it continuously supplies that electrical connection. Well, when you put stuff around the steering wheel, initially it's okay, nothing will happen. But then eventually, one of them will slip, it'll get pushed into the steering wheel and get inside of that, and it destroys it. I've seen this way too many times. Be very careful with that, because some of these spiral cables are very expensive, and you don't want to damage it just from hanging something that eventually got caught up and went inside and destroyed it. But more than that is the one that I see a lot, and you gotta really be careful with this one. Hanging things from your mirror, from your rear view mirror. People love to do that. First, they'll hang 7 air fresheners. The other thing is, you hang your 20 kind of graduation tassels. Look, I'm very proud of you for that, and it's a beautiful thing. But here's the problem. That rear view mirrors in most modern cars are no longer hung on the roof of the car. They're actually sitting with a little tab of glue that is glued onto the windshield. Well, you put all this extra weight on it, eventually you just bump into it a little bit, it'll just come right off. But that's not the end of the world. You can just glue it back on and we're good to go. But here's the problem with modern cars. That area where the mirror is gotten very busy. You have cameras there, you have sensors there for all the safety systems. So when that thing comes off, it's gonna pull everything with it. And now you're not only gluing it back and all this stuff, you're calibrating. It just turns into a massive thing just because we have to hang these things from the mirror. But more importantly, even if your car doesn't have all of that, it actually impairs your vision. Don't hang things from your mirror, folks. And the last one, although this is, again, times are changing. Don't have 200 keys on your keychain. On cars that still have a key, a physical key. We're getting away from those. But all you're doing there is just putting excessive wear on that key. And eventually, one of these days, when it's single digit outside and you're in a hurry and it's super cold, you're going to go and try to start your car, key won't turn because you wore it off on one side. If that ever happens to you, I hope it doesn't, but if it ever happens to you, here's a quick trip. Flip the key. Most of the times that will actually work, but when you have that, you know that you have been wearing this cylinder on one side. Don't hang a lot of keys from your physical key that starts the car. It actually starts wearing things out very rapidly there. Don't use Windex or similar products on your infotainment screen. And folks, just to clarify, because fairness is important here, there's nothing wrong with Windex. Windex is actually a very good glass cleaner, but read the words glass cleaner. Your infotainment screen is not glass. If it was an old CRT screen, then maybe we're okay, but this is not a glass screen. This is very important that you know that. So here's the problem. The problem is not Windex. The problem, and Windex actually have products that work, the ammonia that they use in Windex. That causes significant damage to touch screens and even not touch screens that are in your car. The common thing is the touch screen immediately stops working and then the screen gets discolored. And folks, in their best intentions trying to keep their cars clean, they figured, well, I just cleaned my glass with that awesome Windex that works really good. Let's clean the infotainment screen. I'll just give it a quick wipe. That's all it takes to destroy that infotainment system. And if you are shopping for an infotainment system, just heads up, they are outrageously priced. I mean, unbelievable how expensive the OEM infotainment systems, and they're just, I don't understand it. I mean, it's just a little screen with a little half-baked software to work. Why are they so expensive? That's up to the manufacturers, but that's not our conversation. Don't use cleaners that have ammonia in them on touch screens, folks. You will be very sorry, and the damage is immediate. I see this all the time, and it's super common. And a lot of folks, unfortunately, do not know about this. And it's kind of similar with tinted windows on your car. Don't use ammonia-based cleaners on your tinted windows. You actually damage them right away. Damage the coating. It starts fading and discolor. Be careful which products you use on your modern car. Car floods that are not caused by a flood. I hope that makes sense. Folks, the number one cause of car interiors flooding are two things. Other than the usual, other than like problems with the car itself, two things that usually cause cars to flood without a flood. Sunroof drains. Here's something very interesting about sunroofs, which I really dislike. Did you know that sunroofs are actually a controlled leak? That's literally what they are. Most folks assume, oh, the sunroof has a seal, and it's actually just sealing the glass where it doesn't leak at all. Well, that's actually not the case, because if that's the case, you won't be able to open it. It's actually a little rubberized seal that pushes to slow down the flow of water as it goes into your car. Yes, you heard that right. Sunroofs are a controlled leak. That's exactly what they are. So the way they work is the seal slows down the leak into the gutters, literal gutters, and these gutters have a hose that runs down and drains outside the car. Because the seal is slowing down the flow of water inside, the gutters have enough time to drain. But here's what happens when they don't drain fast enough. Not even clogged, they don't drain fast enough. That water eventually builds up, comes inside your car, and you actually will not know until it's too late. Carpet's soaked, electronics are wet, we have all kinds of electrical gremlins, and lo and behold, it is just a leaf sitting in the gutter and partially clogging it, slowing down the flow. Folks, this happens every single year. We see a lot of cars with clogged sunroof drains, and usually, here's the typical formula for that. Cars parked under a tree, especially in fall time. Cars that are rarely washed and they live in kind of a muddy, dusty environment where a lot of that crud kind of eventually makes its way down and starts clogging the drain. If you live in these conditions, you need to be proactive about cleaning this. It takes 5 minutes. I have a little video about it. We'll leave it right here. Anybody can do it. You don't really need to be, know how to fix cars and whatnot. You could do it. And if you don't, ask your mechanic. They'll take care of it. It won't cost you much. And then the second thing that causes car floods is windshields. Folks, at least in Toyota or Lexus land, we don't really have a lot of windshield leaks from the factory. Toyota really does things well in that department. Other manufacturers, though, some of them don't, so be aware of that. But the problem is when you have a replacement windshield. I see people when they have a crack in the windshield, the first thing they ask is, what's the cheapest one I can put? That's the biggest mistake. It's not about the quality of the glass, it's the labor. You need to go with a reputable company. Look, folks, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect, and that's okay. That's what makes us kind of special. Our imperfection makes us special. You work with a glass company. They made a little mistake. They left a little area that doesn't have sealer. You put the glass on, it leaks. Your car is flooded. You have all kinds of electrical gremlins. Who's going to pay for that? Because your insurance company will be like, you just replaced the glass. That's not our problem. The big company that replaced the glass, that stands behind their work, will be like, you know what? We made a mistake. Sorry about that, but now it's our turn to take care of it. We're going to reseal the glass and fix your car. But if you have some unreputable company, just because they were $50 cheaper on the install, do that, they will disappear in the wind. Folks, it is very important that when you get a windshield replaced, you use a reputable company, because I see this all the time. And it's very simple to actually, if you're going to buy a used car, to identify if this was a replacement glass or not. All manufacturers will list specifically, at least in these times, not in the olden times, they will list their name on the glass. You will see, if it's a Toyota, you'll see it say clearly Toyota. If it's a Lexus, it will say Lexus. If it's any other manufacturer, it'll say their name on the glass. Now, that is not a guarantee that this glass is original, because what if they replaced it with an original one that also says the same manufacturer name? This is when it's going to take a little bit more investigating. But whenever you see a glass that's been replaced, you need to be, especially after a glass replacement, you need to be a little bit more proactive about looking for signs of water intrusion. If you see them, immediately take action. Call the company, have them double check, because you don't want things to fester. Water leaks, initially, not a problem at all. You'll have a little bit of water, it's not a big deal. But it's the month and two later is when the problems start. All of a sudden you have mold inside the car, you have all kinds of electrical gremlins, because all these connectors took a little bit of time to corrode, and now we have problems. Be careful with this, folks. Keep that sunroof drain clean, and make sure you go with a reputable company when you do a windshield replacement. Folks, these are 5 practical tips that any of you can do and avoid, and understand why you're avoiding them. Not just do them and not really question it. You should always ask for the why. That is very important. And I hope these tips make your car ownership better, safer, more reliable, and happier. Folks, I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you. and you have yourself a wonderful day.